All right, good morning, committee. We're going to go ahead and get started because I have been alerted that the Secretary of Transportation needs to be at another meeting at 9:45, so let's go ahead and get started. First item on the agenda, are there any requests for bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and we're going to have the informational hearing, as I mentioned, by the Secretary of Transportation, Calvin Reed, with the Kansas Department of Transportation. He's going to give us an update first on the Ike plan and then also construction updates in regards to the Kansas Turnpike Authority. So I'm going to turn it over to Secretary Reed. Welcome to committee.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's always an honor to speak before the Committee on Appropriations. Obviously, you guys play a huge role in what we're able to do out on our transportation network. And as I've often said, we have a huge transportation network in Kansas. It takes a lot of funding to be able to do it, partnership with this committee and really the entire legislature is what makes that happen. So. Calvin Reed, Secretary of Transportation. I'm here on behalf of the 2,200 plus dedicated public servants at KDOT who are out there delivering all of these projects and all the maintenance and everything that keeps our transportation system moving forward. Like I said, I just want to take a moment to thank you and specifically as appropriators in the legislature for your continued support of transportation. It takes an amazing amount of trust from this body to lay out the vision for a 10-year transportation program and trust us to deliver that program for you. We do not take that trust for granted, and we are honored to be partners with the legislature in delivering these meaningful projects for Kansas. And this is not my intro slide, so I'm not sure which presentation. No, that's okay. I'll go ahead and start. I've got really three things that I want to talk about today. I do want to provide an update on our 10-year Ike transportation program. We've also been asked to provide some details on some very specific projects here in the region. And then we'll wrap up by talking about the largest project that we've ever awarded at KDOT, the US 69 Express project. Very honored to have the Kansas Turnpike Authority here with us who will help provide some information about that specific project. This is a familiar slide that we have communicated consistently over the past 5 years. Really what I want you to focus on here are the priorities in this graphic, and it's really based on the size of the bar in that chart. And these are the priorities of the Kelly administration and the legislature as the Ike program was passed. So first of all, that big yellow bar is preservation, taking care of what we have. We know that deferred maintenance is not a good solution. We need to make sure that we are continuing upkeep on our system. So over half of the program was estimated to go towards highway preservation. So Ike was built to restore our system and to maintain our system going forward. The second priority that I want you to focus on, that blue bar there, is strategically modernizing and expanding our system. Nearly 1/4 of the program was dedicated for modernization and expansion of our highways. And then we want to make sure we're providing adequate opportunities for locals. Those come in our cost share program, economic development program, and then maybe more specifically, a big emphasis on our local bridge improvement program. And then finally, we want to make sure we allow Kansans to have options in how they move by investing appropriately in our different modes of transportation. So as we have collected data on the first 5 years of revenue and costs, we have a clearer picture of what the end of the program will look like, and I'll spend the next few slides providing an update on that. So overall, looking at the revenue side, coming into the program, we're about 20% more than what we estimated in 2020. So I'm going to reference a lot what we estimated in 2020. In 2020, we had to put the program together. We had to understand what the costs were going to be. We also had to have some estimate of what revenues might be coming into the state highway fund to fund those investments. Obviously, an estimate is always going to be wrong, right? And right away, we knew that estimate was going to be was going to be off because we had some major worldwide issues that impacted a lot of the economic factors in those revenues. So things like COVID, price increases that followed COVID, those have impacted what we've seen the first 5 years. The biggest gains that we have seen are in sales tax and federal fund reimbursements, which together make up over 60% of the revenues into the state highway fund since 2020. Motor fuels tax collections have been flat for the past 5 years and relatively flat since 2003, which was the last time that the motor fuels tax rate was adjusted in Kansas. And as I reported to the Special Committee on Taxation, usage of our system has actually gone up over the past few years. It's been a steady, small but steady increase. However, those increases have been offset by increases in fuel economy, especially in passenger vehicles. So looking at the last 5 years of the program, we are projecting steady but slower gains in sales tax revenue and continued level motor fuels tax revenue. Okay? As the current federal surface transportation authorization, IIJA, comes to an end at the end of September this year, we are going to be closely monitoring and having conversations with our federal delegation about what federal funding should look like. Right now that we are projecting it to be similar to what we have seen over the past few years. We're not expecting a big increase in our next authorization or a big decrease. Unfortunately, we have not been able to realize the gains in those revenues because over the past 5 years, inflation has soared and construction prices has outpaced the gains in revenue. So over the first 4 years of the program, we saw double-digit annual inflation hit our highway construction industry. Finally, in fiscal year 25, we saw construction prices start to level off. We continue to see prices steady in fiscal year 26, but we do not expect to see major price decreases moving forward. The result is that prices in 2025 are about 66% higher than what they were in 2021. In other words, a project that would have cost $1 million in 2020 costs about $1.66 million now. These price increases have impacted how much we can deliver with the constrained revenues that we have available. So with that, we have a new program estimate, putting all that together, what we expect the end of the program to look like. As you can see, we are projecting the overall program spending to be about $11.5 billion compared to that 9.9 that I showed on that earlier slide. And that's about a 16% increase. We are still aligning the original priorities by first and foremost taking care of the system through preservation. Meanwhile, taking advantage of the opportunities made available in IIJA to support the vast needs with our locally owned bridges. So, with all of that, I want to be really clear about this next message. We expect to spend more than what we originally estimated. But because of the surge of inflation, we will likely be delivering less than what we had originally planned. It's a hard message, but it is reality of how we have had to manage the last 5 years and what we see going forward in the next 5 years. So I wanted to give this idea. When we encumber funds, we do what we call programming, right? We program projects. So I often talk about projects that are programmed. I want to give you a picture right now of, in all of those buckets of funding, of those buckets of priorities, where we're at in terms of programming. As we get closer to the end of the program, we start losing flexibility because we are programming more and more dollars. This graphic demonstrates the relative amount of funding that has been committed to projects that will get constructed in each of the priority areas that I showed earlier. So what you'll see is the biggest up there, preservation, about 15% is left unprogrammed. Quick explanation on that is for our preservation projects, we are continually evaluating the condition of our system, our bridges, our roadways. We program those about a year before we actually do the project. So we have not programmed yet for 28. We have not programmed yet for 29. We have not programmed yet for 2030, except for some major bridge replacement projects, which take a little bit more time to develop. So we are continually evaluating the system, and we program based off of current needs. KDOT will be closely monitoring the revenues and expenditures, because as we get closer to the end of the program, we lose more and more flexibility in terms of what we're able to program. Now I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. I want to remind people how our transportation program works. This is our first time that we ever did what we call a rolling program. So this graphic should be familiar to most of you. It is our way of explaining the rolling nature of the IKE program in terms of our modernization and expansion projects. These projects progress through the program in what we call the pipelines. Projects are selected based off of engineering needs and local feedback to go into a development pipeline. In the development pipeline, important information is gained through planning, engineering, and public engagement. When projects are developed enough that we have a clear understanding of scope, cost, and schedule, and we have identified funding, and we have verified that we have continued public support for the project, it can be selected then into our construction pipeline. Once we select it into our construction pipeline, that leaves a hole in our development pipeline that can be filled through public engagement and engineering scoring through our local consult process. You know, IKE is the first program that we've had that's operated this way. I think it's been extremely successful, and that we've been able to engage with the public and be able to respond to emerging needs more quickly with this program than in previous programs. The conclusion of this process is selection into KDOT's construction pipeline. In October, we announced over $440 million worth of projects to be added to our construction pipeline, and these projects were spread all across the state and address needs at many scales. For instance, in Lindsborg, we're removing a bridge that is no longer necessary to reconstruct K4 highway going into that city, and that will now become the new gateway to the city. In Southwest and Southeast Kansas, we're constructing passing lanes on rural 2-lane highways to support safe and efficient ag and freight movement. In Wichita, we're expanding a portion of K96 to 6 lanes and including new interchanges. In Leavenworth, we're constructing a new bridge over the Missouri River to replace the functionally deficient and aging Centennial Bridge. In Johnson County, we're constructing a new interchange at K10 and Lone Elm to relieve congestion on K10 and help spur economic development. And in Franklin and Douglas County, we're reconstructing and widening the failing pavement on K33 from Wellsville north to US 56. So that represents $440 million worth of projects that we added into our construction pipeline that we are committed to constructing before the end of the IKE program. In total, you can see here on this graphic what we have in all of our pipelines, the construction pipeline, our development pipeline. You can also see projects in green that have already been constructed. So unlike the beginning of the program, today we have a healthy pipeline of projects that are being developed. With the completion of US 69 Express, which is not reflected in the numbers on this graphic, we have constructed more than $1.1 billion in highway modernization expansion projects under IKE, and now have about $550 million of projects that are under construction. We have another $1 billion in projects that have been committed to construct and have scheduled letting dates. And we also have about $2.8 billion currently of projects in our development pipeline. So we have these pipelines that we can now respond to emerging issues. We can respond to new revenue streams to be able to build these projects out that have meaningful impacts for communities all across the state. Another key component of the IKE program was making sure we had regional disbursement of these projects. So you can see on this slide here, the modernization expansion projects, we are meeting all of our regional goals for those modernization expansion projects. The IKE legislation included minimum investments for each region, and these numbers don't include the nearly $500 million of projects that were delayed from T-Works that we had to deliver prior to starting on any of the IKE projects. So in summary, we've reached the halfway point of the Ike program, and we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish through the first 5+ years. We've been able to deliver meaningful progress across the state thanks to the support and investment you all made by passing the Ike program in 2020. We've improved more than 9,500 miles of roadway and 575 bridges since Ike began. We've also been able to support investment at the local level through programs like cost share and economic development, and investment in the many modes that make up our overall transportation system. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions right now. I'm going to transition to specific projects. If there are questions you would like for me to answer about the Ike program, I'd be happy to do that.
For the sake of time, why don't you just go ahead and just proceed?
Okay.
And then we'll have questions after that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so some very specific projects. Chairman, appreciated our conversation last week, and it spurred me to add a narrative in here about the Polk Quincy Viaduct. I know that wasn't a specific request that you guys had of us, but I think it's such an impactful project to the city of Topeka and to the people traveling to and from the city of Topeka. I thought it was important to provide an update on that. So, this is one of the largest and most impactful projects in this program as we replace the Polk Quincy Viaduct through downtown Topeka. The existing viaduct was constructed in the 1960s, and the condition of the bridge has been deteriorating really for the last decade plus, and requiring more frequent maintenance to keep it operational. If you've driven around downtown, you have seen the active construction site. There's been considerable progress, but there's still a lot to be done. And here's the latest update on the schedule. Beginning late this spring, I-70 through downtown will be closed. We are going to have to close down I-70 through downtown for about 6 months in order to construct the approaches to the new bridge and finish the bridge construction. So it will be closed down until about the end of 2026. At that point, we will shift traffic onto the new highway, onto I-70 and the new bridges, while new frontage roads are being built on either side of the Polk Quincy Viaduct. We expect all construction to be completed by the end of 2027 at this point. Now I want to focus on the K-10 corridor. K-10 has been a big priority through this program, and it's really in two different phases. The first half is the western half of the K-10 corridor. And just as a refresher for those who aren't as familiar with the area, the K-10 corridor is a major commuter corridor that connects I-70 and the Turnpike on the west end to I-435 and I-35 on the east end. It was built in the 1970s, and it was added on in a couple of different phases in the 1990s and the 2010s. And as we have engaged with communities, as we have gone through our local consult process, this project, this corridor has really risen to the top on both the west end and the east end. So I'll talk a little bit more detail about both sides of the corridor. So on the west end of the corridor, the current roadway is the busiest 2-lane corridor in Kansas, carrying over 20,000 vehicles per day. Just for context, that's about twice as much as the second busiest 2-lane corridor that we have in the state. And this stretch is known as the South Lawrence Traffic Way, and it's committed to be improved in Ike in 3 different phases. The first project is actually already completed, and that is the diverging diamond interchange that we were able to construct at 6th Street and K-10, and got that done at the end of 2024. The second project, which is actively under construction right now, will expand the highway to 4 lanes from 6th Street to Iowa Street. This will include new or reconfigured interchanges at Clinton Parkway, Wakarusa Drive, and US 59 in Iowa. The last project will be let for construction later this summer and will build 4 lanes up to I-70, including a new high-speed interchange with the KTA and I-70. The total cost for all 3 phases of the project is nearly $300 million. The east end is a little bit different, but similar. With the completion of the US 69 Express through Overland Park, this 4-mile stretch of K-10 from K-7 to I-435 is now the busiest 4-lane highway in the state, carrying over 75,000 vehicles per day. Because of this need and in response to economic development potential in the vicinity, what we've already seen in DeSoto and other economic development around this corridor, this was selected for our development pipeline in 2022. Last spring, KDOT finished the environmental assessment, including public engagement. The current cost estimate to build out the entire corridor from DeSoto to 435 is nearly $1.2 billion. As you saw earlier, there is no current capacity in Ike to build out a project of this size. So KDOT is looking at ways to break this down into smaller, manageable chunks that we can prioritize and deliver in a quicker manner. The first project that we will be able to deliver is shown up here, and one I mentioned earlier that we announced for our last construction pipeline with the city, partnership with the city of Lenexa to build out a new interchange at K10 and Lone Elm Road. So now I will focus on the US 69 Express. I'll give a little bit of information that we've seen or that about the project, and then I'll hand it over to Steve Hewitt, who will talk about the operations. About 2 weeks ago, we cut the ribbon on this project, which, like I said, is the largest project ever awarded by KDOT at almost $570 million. This design-build project converted the busiest 4-lane highway with nearly 90,000 vehicles per day into a 6-lane, adding capacity with the first-ever express toll lanes in our state. The express toll lanes will help KDOT manage congestion as the communities around the corridor continue to grow and develop. It will also provide drivers a choice as they navigate the traffic on the corridor. There will always be a free option to drive on US 69, but for those that want to save some time, they can pay a little more for the convenience of the express lanes. So, like I said, we opened it up about a week and a half ago. We have a week's worth of data. Don't take too much out of this, but I can show you kind of, identify for you what we've been able to see out of the first week. So about 2% of the vehicles on this corridor last week traveled in the express lanes. For those vehicles that were able to travel or that chose to travel in the express lanes, they were able to go about 5 miles per hour faster than those in the general purpose lanes. We will continue to monitor this and see this, how the traffic grows in this corridor. We expect express lanes to be utilized more as people become more used to it. But we are very happy with what we've been able to see out of the first week. And I want to talk about revenues real quick. This graph shows estimated revenues. Once again, it's an estimate. Estimates are always wrong, but we had to have something that we could go off of here to be able to plan for the future. So this is estimated net revenues for the US 69 express lanes for the first 10 years. These are the best assumptions we have today, but we will have to see how the traveling public actually responds to the express lanes to understand how the facility will perform in the long term. As you can see in this graph, we anticipate that utilization of the express lanes will be modest in the initial years and will grow as population and traffic continue to grow around this corridor. So as a reminder, the Kansas Turnpike Authority is functioning as KDOT's tolling provider. They will operate the toll system, which will include processing trips, billing customers, and providing customer service. The estimate of their cost is represented in this graph in the yellow. KDOT will reimburse KTA's cost for providing these services. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Steve Hewitt, who can talk to you a little bit more about the operation of the express toll lanes.
Why don't we go ahead and have questions, because I know you need to leave in like 15 minutes. So if people have questions for you personally, let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Hewitt in regards to the KTA. So the first question I have, I'm going to go back to slide 11. And this was actually brought up. You and I discussed this last week when we had a meeting in my office. But Representative Francis had brought up a motion in regards to the disparity of funding throughout the state. Obviously, the Northeast and South Central has the most populous areas of the state. But when we're looking at the 10-year target spend, and the Northeast was $550 million. And then we look at the constructed or in construction, and that's almost $400 million. Actually, it is more than $400 million above the target spend. And then we have another $500 million that's scheduled in construction. Yet we look at the southeast and the southwest, and this was the point of Representative Francis's amendment, that they haven't even hit the target area yet. And we've greatly exceeded the 10-year target spend in the Northeast and South Central. And then with the anticipated scheduled for construction, we are farly exceeding the 10-year target spend. We're in the Southeast and the Southwest parts of the state. They are targeted to be there, but obviously as far as a percentage, more of the Ike transportation dollars has been focused on the Northeast and South Central. And so I just want you to kind of explain that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate the question. I also, I appreciate the analysis that has been done, what you have said. When we set up these targets, we were basing it off of several key factors in each of these regions, including, population, GDP, things like that, to identify those targets. What I can say very clearly is I feel very comfortable that we have picked appropriate projects, and we hear that when we go out and speak with people at local consult. We have picked projects that are appropriate for each region. We are delivering what they expect to be delivered. When we go to the Kansas City area, we deliver a $570 million project, which represents well over half of what we have delivered in Northeast Kansas. We know that the needs are great there. We know that the projects are just by nature more expensive in our metro areas. We feel like those expenses are appropriate for those areas. I think when we look at the next program, when we start focusing on the next program, what are some key things that we can look at to make sure that we are investing appropriately all across the state? That's important to me. It's important to KDOT. We want to make sure we're investing at the right levels all across the state.
Well, and I'll say just for me personally, and I don't know if Representative Francis wants to have a follow-up on this, but for me personally, and I'm in the northwest region of the state, and you look at almost $1 billion focused on the Northeast over the 10-year target spend. And then I have a project between the cities of Luray and Osborne, which is drastically needed in regards to safety. And then yet I look at what was actually awarded, and there is the reconstruction of US 281 between Luray and Osborne, but that's only 5 miles.
Yep.
There's 22 miles between those two cities. And I just would kind of wish that some of those dollars would be allocated for the entire project for the US 281 expansion between Luray and Osborne, when we're looking at $1 billion over the target spend in just Northeast Kansas alone.
I appreciate that comment. I would say that project on 281 north of Luray, it's a very important project. We heard very clearly when we went out to local consult, and we also recognize the need for improvements along that corridor. We are continuing to look at ways that we can fund the rest of that corridor. But obviously, we also have to make our cash and our budget work, and so we're making choices based off of the available funds that we have and the priorities that we're hearing all across the state.
And you kind of alluded to my next question when you talked about the next program.
Yeah.
When is that discussion going to be starting?
Yeah, in KDOT, we are already looking. We're looking at what the needs that we're not going to be able to complete in this program right now. We're looking at what we think some priorities might need to be. But I really think it's going to take a collective effort from the legislature, from our communities, from KDOT, to really focus on what the vision is for that next program. In an ideal world, I think that conversation starts next year in 2027, and I think that could be really maybe even a focus of our next local consult, because we really will not be able to select projects in 2027 that could be delivered within the rest of the Ike program. So I think it presents a real opportunity for us to talk about projects, but also start thinking about what we can accomplish with that next program and what needs to be accomplished with that next program.
Is it going to be the same where we have like a task force or a consult? They'll travel around the state and look at different projects?
Well, I think that's up to you guys, but we would love to be part of the engagement of a legislative task force if that's what you guys think is important.
Okay, so my final question is, I'm kind of backtrack back to the Northeast. Obviously, there's a lot of economic development that's going on in the Northeast part of the state, namely around DeSoto and then also the Legends area in Kansas City, Kansas. I've had some conversations with a lot of the projects that are going on at the Legends, namely, obviously, the Chiefs moving over to the Kansas side, and then also with Mattel building a theme park. And something that was alerted to me, and I bet Chairman Tarwater will be able to expand on this as well, because I'm sure he's been alerted to this as well. But they were looking at, this goes to modes of transportation. And something that was brought up to my attention is that there is a contemplation of having pretty much like a monorail system constructed from Mattel, the Chiefs, Speedway, and then possibly even to the Hollywood Casino. And I didn't know if the Department of Transportation has been in conversations with those development efforts in regards to that mode of transportation to assist the visitors in that area.
Yeah, appreciate the question. We have been engaged with each one of those developments. I will say that specific part of the development, a monorail, a transit system, has not been brought to my attention yet. I think we're open to it if it helps move people safer, more efficiently. I think that's something we should all be interested in, as long as it makes sense from a cost standpoint.
So going on I just actually popped in my head. So the interchange at 110th, that's going to have to change.
Mr. Chairman, yes. And in fact, we are actually already engaging in that change. That was actually initiated by the Buc-ee's that's coming in right there. So we have an active project through our economic development program with the Unified Government of Wyandotte County to make changes at that interchange and then also to the roadway network around it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Representative Estes.
Thank you. Did you say 2% for the 69 Express?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, 2% is what we saw last week. Yep.
What's a nationwide average on express lane usage?
Yeah. I appreciate the question. I don't have an answer on that. We can get a better answer for you, or maybe if the Turnpike can give best information from their viewpoint. But right now, I don't have a good answer on that question.
Okay, because the number seems very low to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Secretary, for your collaboration throughout your years of service. You know, when I was part of the planning for the IKE program, there was a lot of talk about Preservation Plus. And it was my understanding when that was first broached with us that that would be used for like passing lanes and shoulders and things like that. Has it been used for that, or has it kind of devolved into a thing where we're using it for fiber and those kinds of projects?
Mr. Secretary.
Yep. Thank you for the question. Preservation Plus has been actually there have been multiple things that we've been able to use that funding for. Part of it helps to go fund the BAG program, the Broadband Acceleration Grant Program at the Department of Commerce. A portion of it goes to, I'll say, Preservation Plus broadband, dig once. And then a portion of it is going to Preservation Plus safety improvements.
So it really hasn't been used for passing lanes and shoulders as it's been actually implemented in this program?
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, I would say shoulders, not passing lanes. Passing lanes are what we would consider an expansion project and not into Preservation Plus.
Representative Francis.
And just another side note, I think one of the problems we have with our local consult process right now is we sometimes focus on specific individual projects, and we don't think about what the overall transportation system in Kansas looks like. And I think specifically in our rural areas, we don't think about how that framework needs to grow. What are your thoughts, and what is the department doing so that we can do a better job of planning so that we in the rural areas don't always get shoved aside for the latest $500 million project in the metro areas.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman Francis. You know, it's a tough question. I think the key word that you used was planning. We really need to be looking at not just what the current needs are. We need to start projecting ahead. In my mind, what we should always be looking at is what is the value that we are expecting to get out of any of these investments? What is our ROI? Right? And that can mean lots of things. That could be safety improvements. That could be relieving congestion. That could be helping to spur economic development. So we have to have real conversations about any of those things that we value and how is our transportation system, how are improvements in our transportation system going to help us accomplish ultimately bringing that value back to our taxpayers.
Representative Francis.
I would hope that we would have some kinds of programs going forward where we're starting to plan about what the transportation system in southwest Kansas, southeast Kansas needs to look like and what those return on investment programs should be. As the chairman mentioned about the 25-mile project between two communities there, we need to make those investments. They're not that expensive compared to some of the other projects we take on.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Representative Helgerson.
Previously, I was told that design and engineering takes about 20% of the cost. What is the factor for artificial intelligence that you're using to reduce the costs for the upcoming projects?
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, it's a good question. Right now, we are not adjusting anything for artificial intelligence. Mostly because we are not incorporating artificial intelligence as systematically into our processes. It will come. I will also say it's not a no-cost solution. I mean, we will get efficiency in our design processes, I think. Efficiency in terms of time, in terms of man hours, but it costs money to utilize those systems. So I am not educated enough right now to say what the multiplier will decrease or increase based off of artificial intelligence. I think the industry right now is trying to figure that out.
Representative Helgerson.
I'm not sophisticated enough to know what kind of a change that will be on the cost, but when I look at all the corporations out there eliminating those positions, and you have how many hundreds of designers do you have?
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, I would say we have
to-
about 200 engineers in our agency right now.
So, well, sometime you need to look at that and look at nationally, because every other industry is moving ahead in that.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a painful decision to be making, but that's going to save us tons of money. Thank you.
I appreciate your optimism.
Okay, we have a few minutes before you need to leave, so we have quite a few other individuals. Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to change lanes for just a minute and actually talk about something in the budget.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you if you are in an RFP situation relating to K6, if you have moved forward on that, and how much are you budgeting for that?
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And yes, we are right now developing an RFP for our interoperable radio system. So K6 is our statewide interoperable radio system. It's a jointly owned system. About half of it is owned by the state of Kansas, managed by KDOT, and the other half is owned by a variety of counties and cities all across the state. It is jointly owned. It is one singular system. It is a large system that we have been recently told by our current vendor will require upgrades. The estimate that they have provided for that upgrade is somewhere for the entire system north of $80 million before 2032. This was somewhat of a surprise to me in the last year and a half. And so we have been really trying to collectively understand what the next steps are. And so we are committed right now because it's such a huge investment. We need to make sure that we are procuring the right system for our taxpayers. And so we're developing an RFP right now to make sure that we're getting the most bang for the buck for our taxpayers.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I kind of see this as a conflict with what the legislature's intent with the money and the funding is currently. Were you aware that we have a proviso that actually addresses this, that we have added $5 million for the continuation of K6, so there is no downtime? We've had conversations with at least 7 larger counties about this and keeping consistency and continuity. So I'm a little concerned that the administration is moving ahead when they're almost exiting, when the legislature has taken a position on this, adding money. And so I have concerns, and I want to hear your response.
Yeah, I appreciate those concerns. We started developing this RFP. We made the decision back in January. Your guys' position came out after that. We did not have a chance to speak with you about what your position is. I would just also note that, I appreciate the $5 million in funding going towards this, but as I said, this is an $80 million total investment, $40 million of it from the state. We would still have to figure out how to fill the gap on that remaining $35 million. That is something that we will have to engage with you about.
Vice Chair Williams.
Mr. Chair, so just only a final comment, certainly, is that I don't know that the KDOT has engaged with us on this. And I know that we are engaging on this topic and care very much about the best operable system that provides continuity and is cost effective. And I'm not thrilled with this, and hopefully we'll address this in our conference.
Did you want to have a final response before you need to go? So
I do need to go. I really appreciate the comments, and this is a very important system for really public safety, emergency management, our highway patrol, local law enforcement. We understand the importance of the system and 100% agree with the idea that we have to have continuity. We cannot have any downtime. That will be a priority as we develop our RFP. But we are absolutely focused on making sure we continue with an interoperable system going forward.
okay, so we do have some other individuals that want to ask some questions, but for the sake of your time, I said that you need to leave at 9:45. So I know Representative Rogers, Sutton, and Ballard, they were on the list, but just engage with the secretary in regards to your personal questions.
Yep.
And I just want to make sure that you're not late for your,
Okay.
I believe you're providing testimony.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're going to go ahead and have an update on by the Kansas Turnpike Authority by Steve Hewitt, the Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Hewitt.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. It's a pleasure to be here. I would quickly just, I'm guessing this works. Okay, so as for US 69, I'm going to be honest with you, our role is extremely simple. And we are very proud to be a partner. The opportunity came to us. KDOT had the opportunity to utilize towing as a tool for US 69, and we are simply a contractor. There wasn't a need for KDOT to create a new towing department, a new customer service center, utilize their partner here in the state, and that's KTA, and so we were more than willing to do that. Our efforts with cashless towing really opened the door to allow us to be a support in this project, save KDOT money. Also, it's important for the customers on the roadway, so those drivers are not confused with multiple different companies or agencies to work with. So consistent billing, consistent customer service, consistent throughout their process. And so the technology is exactly the same. Our cashless towing efforts we put in 2024 mirror the technology that's on US 69. Customer consistency is very important, obviously, and our back office is real simple. So we're going to collect the tolls. We're going to send all the toll revenue back to KDOT. As the Secretary mentioned in his presentation, we'll simply then, our cost to collect that, we'll just send a bill to KDOT, and they will pay KTA for our costs. I do want to mention, though, we will have a third-party audit reviewed to verify our operational costs. And at the end of that audit, it's a true up or true down. So were the KTA's operations too low, and we would then send a bill back to KDOT, or were we too high, and we would send a check back to KDOT? So either way, but that third party will do that. I will just say, currently, under the anticipated trips that are going to be on US 69, and I know it is early, I heard the questions. We do have an anticipation. Our current costs sit at basically for a transponder, which is a K-tag, our costs are 12 cents per trip and 20 cents per image. And why the difference here, obviously, a transponder hits very simple. The K-tags are less cost operations to us. Image requires you have to look the image up, you have to send out a statement, you have to wait for the dollars to come back, and so it drives those costs up a little bit more. All that is through I will say that agreement between KDOT and KTA is through a toll service agreement, and we defined all those things are outlined in our operational efforts. So really how it works, utilizing Kansas Turnpike business rules is how we do with our cashless tolling. As the Secretary said, there's 3 lanes. There's 2 general purpose lanes that don't cost anything for folks to drive through. If they want to go a little quicker, then they'll move into potentially the express lane. Now, the express lane has 4 zones, 2 zones each direction, north and south. And so they run from 103rd Street to 151st Street. And so you'll have a break between those zones. You can get in or out. A double white line, you would not enter the zone and you would not be able to get out of the zone. The dashed white line, the broken white line will allow you to get in or out of the zones. And so it'll be 2 different zones each direction. And the pricing will be very visible on digital message boards. KDOT has determined they want time of day pricing. So obviously during rush hour, the pricing will be a little bit more versus non-rush hour times throughout the day. And so with that price is set, we have that price working with our back office. So then we get those images or we get that information transaction, then we can send out the billing to the customer. So the consistency to the customer, as I mentioned, is they don't see any difference on their billing that they currently see. Won't see something from KDOT. They'll get a Kansas Turnpike Drive KS bill and Drive KS. So when we went to cashless tolling in 2024, we entered a new payment portal. This is part of our branding for our cashless tolling efforts. And really, this is the one-stop shop for all our customers. And I just mentioned this because this is what US 69 customers will see as well. So you have every option you need as a customer. It doesn't matter if you're a commercial customer, passenger customer, non-commercial, multiple businesses. I'm an image customer. I'm a K-tag customer. It doesn't matter. You can utilize this. You can do the website, the app. You can call we have 3 call centers. You can call us. You can pay your toll bill 24 hours a day through our phone or through the app or through the web. We are here to help. You can talk to a live person if you'd like. But all through the 24/7 option of Drive KS, and that's where we drive our folks. So billing through US 69 looks just like it does for our K-tag or Kansas Turnpike customers. So the billing comes in, it would be determined, it would show on your bill if you were on US 69, if you were on our main line, say Lawrence to Topeka, it will show that very clearly so folks can determine that, but all that information will be on Drive KS. Obviously, K-tag, the prices on US 69 on the digital message boards will be the K-tag pricing. K-tag is the lowest price because obviously it's the lowest operational back office cost for us, and so we pass it on to the customers. It's obviously the best option, so we're really pushing that to make sure as many folks get K-tags as possible to keep their tolls low as they can. We are interoperable, so this is just like how we work with other states. We are interoperable with Oklahoma, Florida, Texas, Colorado. This summer, we'll eventually be interoperable with many of the Easy Pass states. We also have national pass partners, Best Pass, Pre-Pass, commercial pass folks, Bank Pass. So the billing you'll see on those when you're driving to Texas or Oklahoma, it will look like US 69. So it'll determine each one of your trips on your statement so you can read that. So again, the consistency is important for the customer, and obviously the savings that KDOT can receive by our operations. We're not going to make any additional dollars on this US 69 project. KTA is just doing this for cost only, and I think it's a good partnership to help the state, KDOT, and it helps our brand as well as we continue to push out our K-tags to customers. You know, I just wanted to point out, we are really here to help. We have a very robust marketing and communication effort through Drive KS. We have how-to videos on YouTube. We have our 24-hour payment effort. We have really been marketing and communicating in the Johnson County area to try to push this out. In fact, since July of 2025, we've issued 37,000 new K-tags in the Johnson County area. And just between January and February, we jumped from 20% up to 32% of our K-tags we distribute out. It really jumped up in the Johnson County area. So we'll continue to market, and we're going to market. Our agreement with KDOT is that our marketing effort we currently do with our regular main line at the Kansas Turnpike, we implement and integrate the US 69 communications effort just like we do. So we'll continue to push the message out and market US 69 to all those folks in Johnson County, as well as our own stuff, you know, to let folks know the cheapest, the most convenient way to have your tolling done is through K-tag, and market the information on how to utilize K-tag. If you're a license plate driver, don't have a K-tag, how that works, how you would pay. We'll continue that, and we'll really continue that effort each and every year. So we're very active in the communication and marketing realm when it comes to our brand, and we'll tack on that US 69 effort to push that out as well. So with that said, that is the 69 effort, and I'm willing to answer any questions about 69 that I can, or any other additional questions about the Kansas Turnpike, Chairman, if you like.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Hewitt. So I lived in Johnson County, right along 69 Highway. I left Overland Park in 2004 and moved to Dallas, and it was heavily congested then. And obviously that was a project that needed to be addressed in that particular part of Johnson County. What is the traffic flow like now, since you have the toll lane, and I know it's only been open for a couple of weeks, but I'm just wondering what the congestion is on the 69 Highway.
Well, the congestion is very light compared to what it was prior to the construction. What happens during construction projects, I think the Secretary may have alluded to it, people begin to migrate to other routes, and it takes about 2 to 3 months for those routes to come back to that improvement. And so it's been very light, as he mentioned, 2%. Through the traffic and revenue study that KDOT did for this particular project, they sent over to us, they expected to have about 4.2 million trips this first year. And so that would put about an average of 10 to 11,000 folks in that lane per day, an average. So obviously we're not meeting that, and that 2,000's out there. But again, the Secretary made a great point. Week one, the continuing education, realize it's open, realizing how it works, as folks begin to change their routes back. So it's very light right now. The speeds, actually, looking at the average speeds, about 70 miles an hour on the general purpose, about 74 miles an hour in the express lane. So obviously, that's not congestion right now. So it will migrate back to that location, and we'll have to monitor. And I think in 3 months, I think 90 days will tell us much more of how these lanes are working.
All right, and going back to pricing, you said that we're one of the lowest of the states that we actually partner with. And I just have a personal experience a year ago, last October, I was actually on a trip with the Department of Commerce for business development, and living in the area of the Dallas Metroplex, They did a project on the LBJ where the lower part of it is actually a toll road and the upper part is actually no charge. And so from going from 35E to the 75 Expressway, I was surprised because I have a K tag and it registered that when I went into the tollway on the LBJ, and it cost me $20 to go between 35E and 75 Expressway, which is not that big of a distance. And so I have to say the pricing for Kansas is a lot less than what the state of Texas charges.
Yes. As for a cashless system for electronic transponder like K-Tag, we have the lowest per mile cost in the country at 4.9 cents per mile. That's the lowest.
I just want to commend you for that, because when I got the bill from K-Tag, I was like, oh, wow, okay. Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. This is a question about K-tags in general, not 69. About a year and a half ago, we received a bill from K-tag, and they said, you owe this much money for being on the some Texas highway that charged. I had not been to Texas, and I just glanced at the picture of the license plate that they had, and it's like, yeah, that's my number. But the picture that they sent had a Jayhawk on it. My tag, same number, had a Wildcat on it. It took about 3 or 4 months to get that situation resolved, and I was told that they're going to go through and eliminate those duplicate number tags. Can you give us an update on that?
Mr. Hewitt.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that is an ongoing problem. Our customer service folks have had to work with a lot of folks that travel out of state that have duplicate tag numbers because Kansas has duplicate numbers. I do not have an update working with the Department of Revenue on where they're at on those tags. I think the new numbers that are coming out are not duplicate. I think the additional number helps, but there's still some duplicate tags out there. And so I would encourage any constituents you have or yourselves, if you run into that problem, please reach out to our customer service. We will actually help you work with the other states to resolve that issue. So it will happen for a while until all those tags are eliminated, but that is a challenge. But again, our customer service folks are more than willing to help you work with other states to alleviate that issue.
Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, they were very gracious and very helpful, but it just took time to get through the system. And I'm like, I'm a Jayhawk too, but I'm a Wildcat first. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that it is an issue.
Well, and
Thank you.
actually, I have a similar story that happened a few years ago where we received a bill from the Texas toll where a commercial truck had the same license plate that we have on a 1974 GMC grain truck that, believe me, would never make its way to Texas. But we have an antique tag on it. And the numbers were the same as the commercial truck, but because that A was in front of all the other numbers, that was what was picked first when they researched that with the Kansas Department of Revenue. And so they were billing us for $1,500 in tolls that this truck was going through. And I have to say, the KTA they assisted us very well because we got a picture of the truck that was going through, and I was like, that's not our truck. Believe me, I had to send a picture of our grain truck, and I was like, this thing will never make it to Texas. It could barely make it 2 miles when we're actually planting wheat. And they were very helpful in getting that resolved, and hopefully they pursued the correct individual. Representative Estes.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to hear Easy Pass because I think my husband's a frequent caller when our license plates and having 2 transponders is a big mess. I wanted to jump over to the Turnpike Centers and Emporia. I called and reported a hygiene issue with the convenience store, the Emporia stop. You guys jumped right on it, and I could tell, but they still fixed this issue with duct tape. And there are many times I stop for gas and I'm going inside because their pumps don't work properly. It's it's a very aging convenience store and set up there. Whose responsibility is it? When will the contract be renewed? And some time ago, I visited with you guys about how bad the cameras are. Have they been replaced? Because the highway patrol could not read the license plate of the person who hit and run me there. They said they were desperate to get new cameras there. Can you update us on any of those issues?
Mr. Hewitt?
I really appreciate that question, and I have some great news for you. So we are currently wrapping up our design with a new architect. We are moving forward on a new facility at the Emporia service area. We've recently done an RFP regarding getting a new operator. We are still negotiating through that piece, but we are about 50% through our design efforts. And to summarize this, basically, how it will work, we obviously need fuel in the area. It is our oldest and aging facility. In fact, going back through some data, I think it's built in the late 80s. And so you can do the math, obviously, and it's lived its life. We expect to go to demo on the old McDonald's location, which currently sits as a Subway and Taco John's. Demo that property first. We will keep fuel open during the project so that we'll have fuel there. Our design will go basically on that facility. It'll be one facility. If you want to think of it like a design of a Quick Trip, a one-stop shop, one operator that would house food and fuel. And it'll be a new state-of-the-art facility with new restrooms, multiple stalls at the restrooms, new fueling. Everything will be completed basically at that location. We're excited about that. We hope to go get a contractor here in the next 60 days once we get to that design point, and we'll do an RFP for that as well. And then our board will obviously have to approve that, but we're very excited to get that moving. We hope within a year from now that store will be able to open. We would get that open, then we would demo the remaining old station, and then we'd clean up that area as well. So we'll add a dog park and some things and picnic tables and some things for travelers that want to stop. We'll expand the trucking as well, the truck parking, and all the technology in the location will be upgraded. So we're very excited about that design, but we are working. It will potentially be nearly a $12 million project.
Representative Estes.
Thank you. All of that was wonderful news. If you'd like to give me more wonderful news, do we now have the cameras at the all of those stops, not just Emporia, where Highway Patrol can control the cameras? That was something that was very important to them.
Yes, thank you for asking that question as well. And I apologize for not answering that directly, but yes, all our cameras are currently working, and we actually have an incident management center at our headquarters. We have cameras up and down the turnpike, and we have a 24-hour operations where our incident management, basically dispatchers, are communicating with the troopers as well as our maintenance folks. And all cameras are working. When they don't, in fact, my director of IT is here. We get a crew out quickly to resolve that. So yes, all cameras and operations are working, and I'm not aware of any issues right now. And when we have cameras down, we see that. In fact, you probably see we've had to do an upgrade on our truck parking in those areas and around that. So we've added quite a bit of technology in the area to manage truck parking, safety, lighting, a lot of things in all our service areas.
Thank you.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I guess a couple things. We talked a little bit earlier about AI and design of highways. What does the Turnpike Authority use for utilizing AI as we keep adding more and more states that we comply with?
Yeah, AI is a great question. We are currently utilizing AI from a standpoint. Our tolling cameras utilize an AI system to allow us to remember and to obtain that information about license plates and for tolling. But I will also say we're very cautious and careful when it comes to AI. And I get this from our IT folks. What the information we give it, verifying the information, make sure it's correct. But we understand that tolling per se is definitely an AI future system and where things are going. and it will really be much more efficient for the customers, which then can hopefully maintain low tolls. Obviously, AI and engineering and the way things are going to look like, we'll continue to utilize that. A number of our consultants will always be using AI, but again, verification the right way, make sure the systems work correctly, but we are engaging in AI and how it can help KTA in a smart way.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How do you get the data of all those different spots now, you know, as it does the scan, kicks it to whomever? Do you have small data centers, or how is that, you know, that's another big just topic here, and is there a big data center in Wichita, or how is that all collected?
Yeah, that's another great question. So basically, we built our own back office when it came to cashless tolling. So all the information is housed on our servers at our locations, managed by our team. So I guess you could say we have our own mini data center at KTA. We want to control that information. We know security and information and data about people and bank accounts and things that they give us. We need to have that secure and have control of that. So that is in-house. We control that, and that's at our headquarters in Wichita.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to tell you, not only did you have problems with license plates, not with the tolls, but we have been talking to the Department of Revenue about it, and I'm asking them right now for the newest update because they have been creating license plates that are duplicates, and it's not the Kansas Tollway's fault. It's a little bit deeper than that. So I am working on that. Thank you.
All right, any further questions for Mr. Hewitt? All right, seeing none, thank you for the presentation today, and thanks for giving us an update. All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and move on to the hearing of House Bill 2788. And House Bill 2788 is establishing the Business Enterprise Program Oversight Task Force to review state administration of priority placement for blind vendors on state property, allowing audits on the administration of such program, abolishing the vending facilities account outside the state treasury, and establishing the Business Enterprise Program Fund in the Kansas Department for Children and Families in the state treasury, and transferring monies from the vending facilities account to the Business Enterprise Program Fund. So for a briefing in regards to House Bill 2788, I'll now turn it over to Jesse Pringle, the Assistant Reviser of Statutes with the Office of the Reviser of Statutes. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jesse from the Reviser of Statutes Office. Today's House Bill 2788 proposes one new section of law that would create a task force and then amends a few existing statutes that govern what is commonly known as the Business Enterprise Program, or what you may have heard be called the Vending Facilities Act. For the committee's context, federal statute, the Randolph-Shepard Act, created a program that provides priority placement for blind individuals to operate vending facilities on federal property. That federal law allows for states to implement a similar program, and that provides guidance and requirements when states decide to do that. The state of Kansas did adopt the program for state property in statute. Therefore, blind individuals are given priority placement in the operation of vending facilities on state property in Kansas. So this bill creates a task force that would review, study, and discuss this program. Some of the items they would review would be governing statutes, regulations, the recruitment and licensing of blind vendors, the training, expenditures of funds related to the program, the dispute process, a review of set-aside funds, and then the Committee of Blind Vendors that is tasked with advising the department. The task force would have 7 members, 2 of which those members that are appointed by the majority leaders in both chambers are required to be or current or former blind vendors. These terms would expire on June 30th, 2028, as when the task force in the section itself would expire. The speaker would appoint the chairperson, and the bill would allow the task force to request that Legislative Post-Audit Committee direct the Division of Legislative Post-Audit to conduct an audit of the Business Enterprise Program. There would be 2 that they could ask for, a fiscal audit and a performance audit. This section does expire on June 30th, 2028, but it also allows the Legislative Coordinating Council to extend the task force by a majority vote. So Section 2, you start to get into the amending the existing statutes on the Business Enterprise Program. So for example, Section 2 is one of the statutes that establishes this program in the state of Kansas. It has no official name reference, so the bill proposes that the name of the program pursuant to these statutes is the Business Enterprise Program. Section 3 deals with the accounting of the program. So current statute allows for the establishment of a vending facilities account outside of the state treasury. And this account is charged with receiving all monies by the secretary for the program. So the bill in front of you would abolish this account outside the state treasury and create the Business Enterprise Program Fund in the state treasury in the Kansas Department of Children and Families. It's charged with also the same as before, receiving the monies received by the secretary for the program. The secretary shall deposit and credit those in the future to this fund. That would require the secretary to keep separate accounting of any set aside funds related and held into this fund. And then the bill also provides for the procedure for transferring the monies from outside the treasury to this new fund inside the treasury. Section 4 just does some cleanup as when it comes to the program name. And then lastly, Section 5, it amends a statute that provides for a committee of blind vendors that advises the department or the Division of Services for the Blind as required by federal law. So federal law says that the state licensing agency, which in this case is the Department for Children and Families, shall provide for a committee of blind vendors, 5 members. So what the bill does, it amends the statute to be consistent with what federal law calls that committee of blind vendors. And then it also provides that the committee not just provide consultation as current law, but it adds in that it shall be meaningful, active consultation to the department. The bill would also direct the secretary to consider the committee's input, and that if the secretary does reject any of the input from the committee, the secretary shall provide a notice to the committee of that decision and the reasons for that. This last section also includes some notice requirements for that committee, what is to be included in that notice, and that notice be provided within 5 days of a meeting. So that is all the items in House Bill 2788, and I'm available for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Jesse? All right, seeing none, thank you for the brief on House Bill 2788. Now we'll go ahead and turn it over to the testimony portion. And first we have Vice Chair Williams from District 77. She is going to be a proponent testimony. Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I wanted to not go over the bill except for a couple of things we might consider for amendment, and but I wanted to demonstrate or illustrate all the work that the Oversight Committee has done. It actually started in August, collecting information, these 3 different notebooks, and trying to figure out what are the issues with this business enterprise program that is supposed to help and elevate those blind vendors to have a career, have a job, have vending facilities throughout our state and public areas. So before, and I can be very brief, Mr. Chair, but I wanted to just read a couple of comments that we heard in our select committee. So I'm going to read some, just a few lines of testimony from our blind vendors themselves. One said, current structure of the BEP lacks transparency and accountability. He also said, many vendors feel the program no longer operates on fair and objective standards, creating an uneven playing field that rewards connections rather than performance. The absence of meaningful oversight has allowed these concerns to persist without resolution. House Bill 2788 provides a necessary framework to restore trust in the program. That's what we're really trying to do, is to preserve the program and actually have it be successful. The individual also said treatment had been, this legislation is not about seeking special treatment, but about establishing a system where honesty and hard work are respected. Another one said they've watched this BE program go downhill. It's devolved into a mess of administrative drift. For years now, the program has been left to run itself with almost zero real oversight, despite program staff's best attempts at doing so. It has been broken for a long time. And if you're going to make progress, testimony said you need it to be politically connected. Otherwise, you are going to be left fighting for scraps. Another individual, and this is the last one that I'll comment, had firsthand experience as a former employee of DCF and now is on the record that for years efforts were made to bring this program into alignment with federal and state law, with best practices. However, efforts were consistently met with systemic resistance. The current lack of accountability and transparency creates an environment where it is nearly impossible for a legitimate business to operate efficiently. So really, the bill just does three things. It establishes the task force. One amendment might be to add an ex officio member. I'm not sure if their secretary is still here. Ex officio member from DCF to be on that task force. And the blind vendors are part of that, and that's, we've already talked about that. The other piece of it, I would also add an amendment, and Jesse, would be we want legislative post audits, and many of us serve on legislative post audit, and typically we don't really put forward legislation that requires the committee to approve. So that's not what this does. The bill actually says that the task force will recommend the audit. We want to take that out. We will recommend the audit. But this is by including the language in the bill. The point is to say this is important. And if the legislature in the Senate and the House vote affirmatively, it also is giving the thumbs up to the committee that this is of high importance. Because it's a performance and a finance audit, or fiscal audit, in conversations with the executive director of LPA, I realized that yes, LPA can handle both, but it's weighty. It's going to take a lot of time. It could be equivalent to 1.5 to 2 audits. So we wanted to be sure that it was inside the bill so that the whole legislative body understood that this is high priority and we've got to have an outside look at it, because what we realized is this particular program had not had anyone going to the sites to inspect those sites and to make sure that there was compliance. There was no checks and balance on cash flow or monies at all. There is something called set-asides, and set-asides are required to be 9% of earnings. So those blind vendors, after they get their income, then 9% is called a set-aside, and it keeps the program going. And that is reported and turned in, but there was no one checking what income was. There was no checking of our 9% being turned in. And in fact, we found a missing about $10 million from 24 to 25, I believe it was 24 to 25, could be 25 to 26, no, 24 to 25, of money that wasn't reported to the federal government on this program. Where did it go? It was just not there. They kind of gave it accounting for half of it after we brought him in last week. So that's good. And I know that there is desire from the administration to improve this program, so we're really happy about that. So the final comment is about this money. This money was off site. It was off budget. We didn't even know about it. At one time, that account, an equity account, had $450,000 in it that the legislature had no oversight of. Now, it did require by federal law to be separated and not in the same bucket as DCF monies to run the vocational rehabilitation program or the BEP program. However, it didn't need to be off on a side completely by itself. And so because of that, it was decided by individuals that received the benefit that they were going to take $174,000 and reallocate that, rename it, reclassify it, so then they can just pass it out to those members unlawfully. And so that's why we need oversight. We should always be in the business about all eyes, all transparency on it. And really, Mr. Chair, that's what the bill does, and I can stand for questions or sit down.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Questions? Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for that brief overview of that bill. No, but I sat through those, and I was just amazed at the lack of accountability, and it was just bizarre that there was actually things like that still going on in our government, and I applaud that. We heard about fraudulent elections. We heard about kickbacks that she mentioned. I'm still just amazed that that went on and still going on to this day. So I applaud it, hope to be a part of correcting that. I do think that we need some kind of a election monitor in that bill, because we heard that they were actually kind of behind the scenes picking who was going to be elected, and then it was just, there was no transparency at all. They just rubber stamped what was elected. So it was just a bizarre situation that I couldn't believe was actually going on. So I applaud this bill and I support it 1,000%. Thank you.
Representative Estes.
Thank you. When I'm looking at Tom Page's testimony, he has a list of people he'd recommend be added in as a friendly amendment. What are your thoughts on his list?
So we want to keep the committee tight, and any of those individuals could be selected by those individuals, including the governor, including the speaker, the president, the majority leader. We just want to ensure there's at least 2 blind vendors, either present or former. So I can certainly take a look at it, but we want to keep it very small. And potentially we could add 1 ex officio, but I wouldn't really want it to get bigger. I will say that we've had conversations with the speaker on this. He's been extremely supportive of this legislation. He's helped us get it to where it is today. And I think he also expressed that he wanted it small.
Representative Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be very interested in having some way or another the National Federation of the Blind. I've worked with them, and I'm very familiar with them, and they have a particular expertise in retail, and they're very trusted, and I think they could elevate some of the policy decisions that are going on.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to tell you, in all transparency, the National Federation for the Blind, it has actually been part of the controversy. So I don't have firsthand experience, but the testimony that we received, that there's some conflict of interest here. And there's actually, there's been a look from the Trump administration also at this program at a larger level. So I personally would be opposed to inserting any entity in. However, if the governor wanted to appoint someone from that association, that would be fine. And I will also speak to this point. There have been quite a few claims or settlements or lawsuits and a lot of grievances. And I think there are some that have been affiliated or in cooperation with this organization. I cannot affirm that. I haven't investigated that. But for these reasons of, I would personally allow those members, the 7 members, to make those judgments.
Representative Estes.
Thank you.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will weigh in on this. I guess there are several things that I found very troubling, and it was covered a little bit. But they're supposed to return 9% of whatever their areas were. And I specifically asked a question about that, and it was like, well, some did, some didn't. Now, that didn't make much sense, that some would choose to return that 9% and others would not. And when I asked why didn't they go after it, they said because they couldn't enforce it. And that didn't make a lot of sense. Then there's what you call good locations and undesirable locations. And some people would be in those places, and if someone complained about them, they just removed them. So there, I guess in this case, there really does need to be oversight, because if you're supposed to return so much of that profit and you don't, and no one enforces it, or they decide you're on the board, you're elected to the board, and then they send memos to some people on the board, but they don't send memos to the other people that are on the board, and they don't know about the meetings, then that says that you're ostracizing the people, but they were duly elected to serve the board. So it really was very troubling. And the majority of people working are not visually impaired. So, not that they have to be, but it's like you had rules, but they weren't enforced. Then this person said they had no control to do anything over it. And it really shouldn't work that way. I'm not sure about how much money was really involved in it, but it really was a lack of being able to enforce any rules that they did have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to respond. We actually have a remedy for that particular item or a cure on page 6 where notice is required. They have to give at least 5 days notice because we heard that. I do not have a remedy yet for Representative Carpenter's recommendation about the elections. That's a very good point. I believe that the task force could come up with a remedy. However, we have 6 members of the select committee in this committee, and if you think of something before tomorrow or the next day or whenever we run this, then please let me know, because certainly I would love it to account for that. That was a great point.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you, Vice Chair Williams. Committee, we also have proponent testimony that is written, and that is from Matt Miller, who is a private citizen, also Andrew Kane, who is a business enterprise program vendor, and then Greg Meese, I hope I pronounced that right, which is a business enterprise program owner. So you have those proponent testimony. I'm not showing anybody else as proponent, so if you are a proponent for House Bill 2788, here's your chance. All right, we'll go. I'm not showing anybody that is having opponent testimony in regards to 2788, so we'll go ahead and move on to the neutral testimony. And first, we were going to have Secretary Laura Howard with the Department of Children and Families, but she had to step out because she went to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And so I believe we have Dan Decker, who is online as a neutral testimony in regards to House Bill 2788. Mr. Decker. Maybe we don't. Okay, so you have the Secretary's testimony in your folder. We'll also move on to the other neutral testimony that we have, which is Tom Page, and he is the chair of the Kansas Advisory Committee on Services for the Blind, and I believe he is online. Mr. Page.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Thank you, committee. In effort for full transparency, I need to introduce myself also as sitting president of National Federation of the Blind of Kansas. It is through that role that I was appointed by Governor Brownback to serve on this Kansas Advisory Committee, and over time have become the chair of that. I think oversight is great. I think that this program is very critical to blind Kansans and can provide fantastic employment opportunities and can really help somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit to be employed and become a successful contributing member of society, which is what, bottom line, we all want. The elected board is, by its nature, political. And so, I want to dispel any notions of interference from the National Federation of the Blind. We are a advocacy organization of blind people. Some of the vendors in our state are members, some aren't. But we have no direct influence on this program except through advocacy roles. Also, National Association of Blind Merchants is a division of National Federation of Blind. It's the leading professional organization of blind vendors in the country. And I know there have been some crossovers on some of these lawsuits that were mentioned with National Association of Blind Merchants. And the best thing I can offer is that if this task force can produce policy changes within DCF that allow for more administrative oversight, I think these things will evaporate. And the reason these lawsuits came about is because the DCF management has been playing fast and loose with this program for a long time. So I really appreciate the spotlight being turned on this, and I can stand for any questions.
All right, committee, thank you, Mr. Page. Are there any questions for Mr. Page? Representative Carpenter.
So thank you very much for being here. So you oversee more of these programs than the one here in Kansas, then, in your position?
No, I am the president of our Kansas state affiliate. We are made up of 52 affiliates. That's all the states in Puerto Rico and DC. So I personally am mostly familiar with the Kansas situation. However, interaction with National Federation of the Blind has led me to meet many vendors from around the country. And my assessment is that there are states that are probably similar to ours and are maybe suffering, having some problems. And there are states that are doing very well and have run this program very successfully since the 1930s. So I don't think it is a difficult thing to run it well. And I do think the more stakeholders that are blind people and elected representatives of the blind, I think the better this task force will be able to operate.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Another follow-up.
Yes, Representative
So
Carpenter.
do you think that this organization that we're dealing with is run well?
Mr. Page.
No, I don't. I think there has been a real lack of what I want to say, administrative oversight through DCF. It has not been grown, which is a real part of the problem. I think if, some of these political problems amidst the vendors would evaporate if there were twice as many vendors. I mean, we're talking about a 4 or 5 person elected board out of 10 total. And so that may be partly if as you guys may be well aware, sometimes in small town politics, somebody's feelings get hurt. I think, again, over time, if the management of DCF legitimately oversees this program and does it in such a way that is growth oriented, a lot of these problems will take care of themselves.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions for Mr. Page? All right, seeing none, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee.
I'm not showing anybody else providing neutral testimony, so I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 2788. Committee, that's all of the items that we had for this morning. As I believe Vice Chair Williams kind of mentioned in her testimony in regards to House Bill 2788, the intent is to work this particular bill during tomorrow's committee meeting. So with that, until 9 a.m. tomorrow, we are adjourned. We're adjourned.